Well, we're doing another one of these live here on YouTube for the afternoon drive. Yours truly, Pastor Marty. It's Thursday night. It's after 8 o'clock, and I'm here in my other man cave. I've got a couple of them here at my house. One is my personal office and studio where I do my radio show from, I do my videos from, and then I have this area where I come and, yes, I enjoy one of these. But that all said, tonight, let's talk a little bit. I've been musing, as I'm sure many of you have, all day long, watching the endless news footage of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, and knowing, on the one hand, as Americans who love our country, we get incensed when dictators, in particular Russian dictators, start throwing their weight around and acting like the big bully on the block. Now that's the whole way that Putin is being portrayed to the American people in all of the news coverage, whether it's on so-called left-leaning mainstream news or even on so-called right-wing news like faux pas news, formerly known as Fox News. I'm not here to be an apologist or a defender of Vlad Putin. He is what he is. He's ex-KGB. For 20 years, he has talked about reunifying the Soviet states. We understand what he's about. I'm not even going to get into that tonight. I've got two other commentaries on that. You can watch those. What I really want to look at tonight is the connection between Ukraine and Joe Biden. And I've been thinking about this a lot today. Is Joe Biden really as off as we think he is? Or has he, almost in a brilliant move, played us for fools? Is he like the old mafia boss that has, lived his entire life doing very nefarious things, and when finally it's the feds think they've got him and they're going to bring him to trial, and they bring him out into public and they shine the light on him, you see this old, withering, kind of drooling on himself figure, and he portrays himself to the court as this feeble old man who couldn't do anything bad, let alone run, of course, a big crime family. And oftentimes it works. And I'm wondering, is that what's happened to us? Is Joe Biden really colossally incapacitated, incompetent, and absolutely devoid of the ability to have actual cognitive, reasonable thought processes and conversation? Or have we been played? Now, the reason I ask that is you have to think about the relationship that Joe Biden has had with Ukraine since he was the vice president of the United States. Go back in your memory. Remember when Biden was bragging about how he went to Ukraine when he was then vice president of the United States, and he told them, you're going to get rid of this investigator, you're going to bring a stop to this, or the aid that you have been promised by the United States, you're not getting a dime of it. And they said, you don't have the authority to do that. We made this arrangement with the president, Barack Obama. And what did Joe Biden, when he tells that story, he's always the hero of his story. And he got real cocky and he said, Colin, I'm getting on a plane in 4 hours? If this guy isn't fired, you're not getting a dime. Well, they fired him. And of course, we found out that what was being investigated was the very organization that was pumping millions of dollars into one Hunter Biden, son of Joe Biden. Now, what was all that about? Burisma paying Hunter Biden millions of dollars, a guy who got bounced out of the military for not only crack use, but crack dealing. I mean, if you watch the videos that have been taken off of his laptop, which apparently you can see them on Fox Nation, I mean, this guy, he was making porn. Vice president's son, he's uploading porn to Pornhub. He was messing around with his dead brother's wife, consoling her, and it turns out he got her addicted to crack and to meth, and they were making porn videos, and they had, threesomes and all kinds of just, weird, kinky stuff going on. I mean, Hunter Biden, at the end of the day, absolute dirtbag. For as much as the lying legacy, corporate, corrupt mainstream media loves to try to go after Donald Trump's family, and they salivate and almost have orgasmic climaxes themselves when they think that they've got the Trump boys, that a judge is making them give a sworn deposition, and I mean they just get ecstatic over this. And the reason they get ecstatic over this is because, again, Democrats, especially what we would call the neo-libs, they're real good at projection. The very things that they themselves are involved in, the very things that they themselves have personal experience in, they just project that on everybody else and just assume that's how everybody else is. And because so many of the Democratic leaders, their kids are vile and corrupt, they just assume, obviously, that, well, even on the Republican side of the aisle, that's how it works there. They're just vile and corrupt. So as much as they have tried to tarnish, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka, and again, I don't personally have any inside baseball knowledge here of all of their business dealings and how they are in business, but I'll say this. Again, you look at all of Donald Trump's kids, including Tiffany, and of course Barron is still a kid. They have for years and years and years been in the public eye, and yet never really any nasty, horrible, rotten scandals that have ever involved the Trump kids. But we have seen all kinds of scandals involving Joe Biden's kids. And in particular, Hunter being paid millions of dollars by Ukraine, who we know why that was being done. They were trying to buy favor with the then presidential administration of Barack Obama. It was quid pro quo, or in this case, quid pro Joe. When Donald Trump won the White House, when he became the president, well, Ukraine was cut off from the help they had that they had paid a lot of money to the Biden family. Now, think this all through with me now. Remember the impeachment? That second failed impeachment, the so-called infamous phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine. And we had all these Ukrainian insiders that were feeding the prosecution, i.e. the Democrats, all this information about what was supposedly going on. You understand that even then, they were still hedging their bets. I'm talking about Ukraine now. That Joe Biden was going to get into the Oval Office. And they were putting a down payment on the future Biden administration by trying to set up and frame the then president, Donald J. Trump. And in their minds, they did that. Oh, I know the president didn't actually get impeached and removed from office over his Ukraine phone call. But now Joe Biden is back in the White House. And Ukraine, they're coming debt collecting. They're coming debt collecting. And I'm sorry. On the one hand, I am not a defender of Vlad Putin, but on the other hand, part of what he was able to use as, quote unquote, his excuse to going in there is Ukraine was not honoring the Minsk Accord. They weren't. And they were inflicting problems, blockades, financial havoc, and even bombarding within Ukraine other sovereign free states. And so Vlad Putin was able to use that as his excuse to go in there and say, "Niet, You will not do this anymore. And again, I understand for Vlad Putin, this whole thing is a show. He wants to reunify the Soviet states. We understand that. We got that. I will say this. I really thought Vlad was smarter than this. He had Joe Biden really on the ropes as far as we have been lied to so much through the years by our State Department and the so-called intelligence community when they had the evidence of the weapons of mass destruction, and that turned out to be not the case. And so many times, we have just been lied to. And so when we started hearing Joe Biden day after day talking about Vlad Putin is invasion is imminent, the people of Ukraine didn't even believe it. I've had on my radio show interviews of those who live in Kiev, and they said they don't believe it, that the West has got to stop freaking out and panicking. This is just the United States White House overreaction. And so in that sense, Vlad Putin, if he was a smarter chess player than he turned out not to be, I understand he went for Ukraine now because he sees and senses weakness in this current president, and he certainly would have never done this under Donald Trump. But if he really wanted to have inflicted even more problems and even tanked the current president's polls even more, all he had to do was just sit on that border and do nothing. So that every day, Joe Biden's out there. It's any minute now, because even left-leaning alternative media like Breaking Points and others here on YouTube, we're all saying there's not going to be an invasion. This is more overhyped by the Biden administration, yada, 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 yada. And then Vlad went ahead and he invaded. And of course now becomes the compulsion that, well, this can't stand. He's invaded a sovereign country and we've got to do something and this has got to be stopped. And as I said, how convenient that this is all happening a week before the continued delayed State of the Union, which has been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Why? Well, what does President Biden have to go in and declare before the joint session of Congress? Hey, inflation is through the roof. Hey, we can't get people to go back to work. Hey, you're paying double for home heating oil. Hey, gas is up over $3 a gallon and over $6 a gallon in places like California. Hey, the border is wide open and we've got more people coming, flooding in here and sucking up our resources than we know what to do with. Hey, everything I said about how to contain and handle the virus, we didn't get it right, and it's just been one lie, one disaster on top of Afghanistan debacle. Now he gets to go before Congress to a standing ovation as a wartime president, because this is all the excuse the libs in Congress need to give that optic of him being well received. But people like Lindsey Graham and the rest of the rhinos are going to do the same thing. And if he goes in and he uses the State of the Union, which he will, as his stump speech to really, bring the hammer down, even militarily, on Russia, it is just going to get the neocons and the warhawks and the warmongers, it's just going to get them all ginned up, juiced up, and ready to go. And that's now the optic that he gets. I said for weeks, he's been goading Putin into doing this. I really thought Putin was smart enough or smarter not to take the bait. But apparently he senses this. Now, while we're all watching this, and while we're all, pontificating and trying to wax eloquent about what's happening over there, what's going on with China? Is China going to invade Taiwan? Are they going to feel emboldened to be able to do that? And that's an area where we would have to step in militarily. Now, again, I know I've already covered this, and I don't want to be redundant, but let me go through it again. Had Donald Trump been president, number one, this wouldn't have happened. So all of you libloons that, oh, we gotta get rid of Donald Trump, he's a tyrant. Really? We were free under Donald Trump. There were no mandates under Donald Trump. We gotta rid of Donald Trump, his tweets are so mean. What we wouldn't all give for a mean tweet and $1.80 at the gas pump again. Oh, and to walk into stores and there was actually stuff on the shelves. Grocery stores fully stocked. The supply chain actually working. What we all wouldn't give to have that again. Which, by the way, that's another thing with all of this. This becomes now Biden's new excuse why we've got supply chain issues, why we've got inflation, because of the sanctions. It's our patriotic duty to suffer, even though he and Lindsey Graham and the rest of that ilk will never suffer. You and I will. We'll feel it at the gas pump. We'll feel it at the grocery store. I went to the grocery store today, couldn't find half of what I wanted. And what I was able to buy, it was twice as much as it was just a week ago. But it's our patriotic duty, and they're going to ram that false narrative down our throat. It's our patriotic duty. You don't love democracy if you don't want to obliterate these people and cripple them financially. Again. This wouldn't have happened under Donald Trump. First thing he would have done if Putin had showed any aggression this way, he'd have been on the phone directly with Putin, and he would have said, I will take you out financially. And he wouldn't have messed around with these kind of sanctions that Biden keeps playing around with. He would have cut Putin off from international finance. He would have made sure that there was no way that Putin was able to get his hands on anything. Not a dollar, not a ruble, not a Bitcoin, not a penny, not a farthing, not a widow's mite, nada, nothing, not a shekel, nothing. Then he would have turned off his oil supply. Putin would have had nowhere to sell his oil. Donald Trump would have made sure of that. He would have really opened up our spigot of Germany and every other country that buys their oil from Russia. And if China stepped in and told Russia, hey, we'll buy everything that you can't sell anywhere else now, he would have really turned the heat up on China when it came to the trade war. And he would have done everything that he could to make sure that not one American life had to be put in literal physical harm way to stop Putin. But those ships have all sailed. And now this is what it is. And if Putin really does become deranged and intoxicated to the fact that he thinks, he can conquer the world, then unfortunately, then we got to step in and we got to get involved. And all of this makes it Biden's war. I said that earlier today. This is Biden's war. So you got to wonder, again, the original question I asked when we started this live feed tonight. Is Joe Biden playing us all for fools? Is he really this mentally impaired, dementia-ridden individual that we think him to be? Or is he actually this brilliant that the way he avoids any type of problems over what his son was doing in Ukraine, the finances coming his way, is that he plays dumb, he plays senile, when in reality, he is sitting in the Oval Office tonight, feet kicked up, drinking back some coffee and just smiling, saying, it worked. It worked. Did you hear John Kerry today say that he hopes Putin fights this war ecologically? Pat Buchanan, 3 decades ago, in a Republican speech at the RNC, asked, where do the Democrats find these leaders? The International House of Pancakes? That was actually hilarious. Really? You hope he fights this as a green war, huh, John? I mean, even the liberals, lit up Kerry on Twitter over that today, because that's, how do you spell stupid? Well, apparently John effing Kerry. That's how you spell stupid now. So this whole wokeism and radical left, which is now the base of the Democratic Party. And again, you've got Biden, who in public appears to not really understand what's going on with the base, and he kind of acts muddled and befuddled and behind closed doors. He's like, I got this. I got this. This is the way I turn things around, and we even don't take a bloodbath in the midterms because we're at war. We're at war. Pay attention, because all we can do right now is watch and wait. That said, I hope all of you have a great night, and that ends this live feed.